Honestly, it is pretty rare for me to not want to play a game again, but there are a few instances where I'm just like, there's no way we're being for real right now. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Wolfpack. Yesterday we talked all about things that make me want to play a game again. But today I wanted to flip the coin and do the complete opposite, which is talk about 3 main things that makes me not want to play a game again. And I want to give you my first one immediately because this is the number one reason, the most undebatable, undisputed reason why I don't want to play a game again. And that is if it has a bad rulebook. See, here's the thing. It's actually painfully obvious when a rulebook hasn't been play tested, not heavily per se, because that's completely different. It's more so when games haven't been play tested across a bigger sample size, a more diverse gaming group, because the nuances become a lot more apparent. There are some publishers that have very, very pristine rulebooks and that are consistent in how they have play tested their games. And the reason why is because the way they word different phrases and the way they are able to bring you to the table immediately is consistently done so well. Stonemaier Games, Keymaster Games, Restoration Games, Leader Games, all of these companies, all these publishers are always consistent in how they are presenting the rulebook because their rules are always so tight and clean and you rarely have any questions after you finish reading them. On the other hand, there are some other rulebooks. Can you guess who? Like Awakened Realms, for instance, that have consistently produced bad rulebooks. And the reason why is because there are so many unanswered questions after you finish reading and you don't always know where things are placed because it feels like most of the playtests for their games have been done in-house. And you can feel it. And after playing so many different games and being exposed to so many publishers and rulebooks, I just feel like you can feel it. You can feel that this game hasn't been playtested across a bigger group. Easy way you can tell is because the rules aren't written for someone new to the game. They're written as if you already know what the details are, as if a lot of their rules have assumed knowledge, meaning you already know the vocabulary, the terminology, and where things are placed are just very vague because you are. Don't get me wrong, they make good games and they're really fun. A lot of them are. But man, I hope one day I don't have to struggle through an Awakened Realms rulebook because my God, it is such a pain to get through Nemesis. Number 2, aside from the rulebook, you know what's the second thing that makes me not want to play a game again? This is probably the most neglected reason, or at least it feels neglected. It may not actually be on the board game production side of things, but it feels neglected. And that reason is a bad board game insert. Look, if a publisher happens to be watching this video, know that it is a win-win for both sides if you produce a game that has a good insert. Reason why is because if you are able to cut the time between gamers setting up a game to gamers having fun, the more time they spend on the table having fun, the more likely they're about to talk about it, the more likely they're going to share it, the more likely they're going to get more copies of it for their friends or something. It's just more of so many positive things. One reason why so many games sit on our shelf is because the insert sucks, so we don't want to put it away. Look, I still have Black Rose Wars on the floor there after how many weeks now? It's still sitting there. I do need to fix that. I'm going to try to do it today now that I mentioned it a million times already. But it's still on the floor because the insert is so bad. I don't even want to deal with putting all that away in the midst of working on this review, in the midst of working here. You know, it takes time away from me being productive to put away that insert. And speaking of working on a review, let me go ahead and pull out this insert. Poor Tea Garden's getting the blunt end of things right here because I've been using it for all kinds of examples. But see this insert? It is okay. It is not the best. And you just look at it. I'm going to go ahead and give you a second to think about why this is not the best insert. On the outside it looks fine, right? But then practically speaking, look at how all of these pieces, there's so much gap. In reality, you only have a very, very thin layer that you can use to store all these pieces. And there are 4 different colors. There are 4 giant tins that are 4 times the amount of space. And then when you reach in, look, they're not, you grab a little bit at a time. And as much as you do, it's so impractical to grab pieces out like that. Instead, just throw a bag in there. What would be easier is if you had little lids or containers to just put in there. Or I guess you could just take one of the Ziploc bags that I have already and just put it in that slot. But then again, it wastes so much space. And if we look on the inside, this means that this game can't probably be stored vertically because everything's gonna fall forward. Even if you have the player boards and the overall game board here, it's not going to prevent all of this from shuffling out. And interestingly enough, there is one tiny little corner and one specific spot for a first player token. I get why there are first player tokens in a lot of other different games, because usually they're super unique, there's something crazy, or it's already in a spot that's already utilizing that space for something else. But in this game here, you have the first player token on a random corner, and it's like you could have used that entire corner to house way more things that you actually do need for the game. For instance, cards. The cards here are such a weird spot. You have these really big cards, but then you also have cards that are thinner, and there's no spot here for the thin cards. Instead, it protrudes all the way up over here, so it pushes out the actual game board. See, there's so many nuances to board game inserts, and all of that I just described to you in a minute, that right there can be spent playing the game instead of trying to organize it. All right, so last and final reason for the day, and the one that I actually got rid of the game for, and that is because of endgame scoring. Endgame scoring is so important, of course, to gameplay, because the last thing you want to do is spend all this time playing game to realize that in the very end, it was like the biggest, it feels like betrayal. Not the game betrayal, but it feels like you've been betrayed. The first game I think of with bad endgame scoring is a game that I actually reviewed and ended up getting rid of, and that was Terracotta Army. Look, Terracotta Army, I wanted to love this game. It was so cool. The theme was epic because it was, formed after the Terracotta Army. I love the miniatures in the game, and the way that you're doing this worker placement was so interesting, and I love the way the game developed over time, because then everyone is building up this center board full of Terracotta Army soldiers, each of them having asymmetric abilities. This game is going on point all the way to the very, very end. And we get to endgame scoring, and it's just like, what the heck just happened? This game is so good. Why did it fall apart so fast in the very end? And the reason why is because it was overcomplicated, and there was no way that anyone was going to even remember how the game was scoring by the end, because you're trying to learn all of these mechanics in the beginning. And by the time you get to the end, it's like, why did I do all of these things if they're being taken away from me? So when things are taken away from you in endgame scoring, it diminishes the amount of reason for you to want to play the game again. And also in that game, it was weird because the way orientation was set was so confusing. I think it was the way archers scored or something. I kind of forget because I got rid of the game so long ago. But I know that in Terracotta Army in the very end, I hated it because it was just overcomplicated. In the end, I just wished that Terracotta Army had a simpler scoring system, because it involved way too much math and orientation and positioning when it didn't need to. The game honestly could have just finished by scoring how many points you get for having archers, how many points you're having soldiers, but instead it just was overcomplicated and convoluted. And this right here actually was what I would call bloat. It just felt very bloated. It's like you don't need all of these different conditions to have a fun endgame scoring, because this is the huzzah moment. This is the let's go, celebrate, let's play again moment. And the more rules and the more conditions you add on to a moment that should be simple, then the less likely that people are going to enjoy the moment. It's like, imagine this. New Year's Day, you're about to celebrate it, you're waiting to midnight, you get to midnight, and you just start jumping and celebrating and hugging family and stuff, and you're blowing the party poppers or whatever, and then immediately someone's like, oh wait, you can't blow the party popper like that. You have to actually use this color. Oh, you can't jump like that. You have to actually go on 1 foot instead of 2 feet. Oh wait, that's too high. You should jump only with 1 foot and to this height and spin around as you're doing it. It's like, that's what convoluted endgame scoring feels like. It's an anticipated moment. You built up to it. You get to that point, and you should just be able to celebrate and do whatever you want. Instead, you have all of these rules just narrowing down the fun to the point where it doesn't become fun anymore, and you don't want to celebrate anymore. So that right there is what deters me away from playing a game again. The bottom line, here's what makes me not want to play a game again. 1, bad rulebook, easy. 2, bad insert. And 3, endgame scoring that doesn't make sense or that's overcomplicated. I feel like I missed a thing or two, but thinking about it over the past day or two, I feel like these are my top 3 reasons for sure why I don't get games played again. And it's not often. It's really pretty rare for me to not want to play a game again, because for the most part, who wants to play bad games? We all want to play good and fun games, and that's what we look for, and that's what we end up playing, right? So anyways, you made it to the very end. Let's end on a positive note. Go ahead and comment, celebrate, because we should celebrate the end game and not do anything else aside from that. Thank you all so much for watching this back-to-back rant of why I should and shouldn't play games. I'm excited to hear what you all think, and I will see you all tomorrow.